Today is March 6, 2025. It is 2:47. We are visiting with Jason Bourdukofsky Sr. And we, the staff, is George Pletnikoff Jr. and myself, Aquilina Lestenkoff. May we record you?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so let's start way back when. Just share with us your name, if you had a nickname, your age, your brothers, sisters, your family, grandkids, anything about yourself.
Right. Okay, I was born here on St. Paul in 1942. Matter of fact, April 1st. I always say a fool's got to be born sometime. And I was born on April 1st. And my grandpa didn't believe my dad, too. Tell him about it. He had a boy named. But anyway, I was born here. I lived here all the way until I think my first trip out was 1956. And that was, I flew on an airplane, DC-3. I wonder why the stewardess gave me a blanket, Well, you could see daylight through the door and everything, so you needed that blanket.
Was that a Reeve plane?
Reeve plane, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's an old, two prop, I don't know. And we had when we left from here, we flew over St. George and had an airdrop, Well, on the plane with you was some students from St. George, they had to come over on a earlier boat. They stayed here about a month. They stayed here about a month before they caught the plane to Anchorage. Yeah.
And
then when we were doing the airdrop on St. George, they started crying, "That's my daddy!"
Oh, you could see the people.
I see their daddy down there in St. George when we come for the airdrop. We was lower, and
Did they open the passenger door? How did they drop?
No, they had a system where they had wired underneath cable, and they strapped this mail bag, to that. It was just like dropping a bomb,
So it was outside the plane?
It was outside the plane.
Oh. I always wondered about that.
And they pulled a trigger and dropped the and that was really something,
1958, huh?
Yeah, 1956.
1956.
Yeah. Prior to that, it was, we had a lot of snow here and during the winter time. And, we're fortunate, that we had chickens. We had fresh eggs all the time, and when we were growing up, I lived there in house 17 that time. 1952, we moved down to the lower place down there, house 54. And that was something, the house we stayed in, like I say, winter time was a lot of snow. No vehicles would go around, the snow would all pile up, and then we had storm doors, on the door. And so my dad's going to go to work. The big snow pile on the door, he can't get out, And he shoved me out the window with a shovel. I go along inside the building, then go around and I shovel by the storm door so he could get out to go to work.
Wow.
It was really something. I never forget that. Just going out that window and shoveling snow.
Were you born in that house or in the hospital?
I was born in the hospital.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then what they call and we had chickens. Of course, we didn't have running water, and we had to bring snow in, melt snow. We had a big tazo to fill that up. It was really funny, the youngest one would take a bath first, and then we all line up taking a bath in that same water. After that, they'd use that same water, and Mom would use that scrub board, that washing clothes with the same water because we didn't have no running water or nothing, and we had
So that
honey
means
buckets.
you got to take a bath last.
Second to last.
Oh, okay.
I had an older brother,
right.
I had an older brother, and he died in '54 when they had polio. Yeah, that's funny. There were 3 of them that died all the same time.
Wow.
There was Juliana Mandragon and Kachutin, Nestor Kachut and Juliana and my brother all died at the same time of polio. That was their first Slavy Day, So that first Slavy Day, and then the second day when it was a altar boy that time. I went to church. I never forget that. I went to church that time, and the church was empty. And then finally, the foreman, Victor Mazigan, came around and he talked to John Mazigan. John Mazigan came up to the altar and told him there's no gathering. Everybody's quarantined. They have to stay home. And so Father Baranov, he stopped the service and he mentioned that there's sickness going on, that everybody has to go home and stay home, so. And they had polio. It was
So it started.
That was a sad time.
Started at Slavy time.
Yeah, Slavy. Yeah, it was the second day of Slavy that quarantine, because first night, the Slavy, and then the second day would have service in the morning, but nobody showed up except the foreman, Victor Mazigan, to pass the news on to Father Baranov that no gathering, or everybody's quarantined at home, It was bad for me, though. It was really a sad time, My mom, was at the hospital and with my brother. My dad was there too also, and then my dad came home in the afternoon he pulled out the ironing board and ironing my brother's shirt. I knew what was wrong. He was crying and ironing that shirt,
When did he pass? What month after polio was? The quarantine was in January. When did Benjamin pass away?
He passed away on the 3rd, I think. On the third day of Slavy.
Oh, okay. So
because we went to second day, we went to, like I say, we went to church in the morning. My brother was an altar boy too, so he was my older brother. And we came after that. We came home, and then we had the coal stove. When we came home, he was standing by the coal stove. He started shivering, and everything else. Then I hurry up and tell my mom, there's something wrong with Ben, And so we went to coal, and they ended up taking him to the hospital. And that's the last time I seen him. Because we were in quarantine, and they brought his body to the house, but then couldn't go there or say goodbye or nothing,
Oh, yeah.
And
this was down there in House 54.
Yeah, we were restricted from even getting close contact or anything. And it was sad, because of only the priest and Preferi had come there, and what they call Eddie McCoy, the choir conductor, and they have service,
Instead of in the church.
Yeah. And then they buried him up there. And nobody's come around to say goodbye to them or anything. So sad.
Was he the first of the three?
I'm sorry?
Was Ben the first of the three? Nestor and Juliana, they passed away after him?
No, they all passed away practically on the same day, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then what they call him, Mike C. was in the hospital too. They said he wouldn't walk again, but he got over it. I don't know. I remember when we were quarantined. We were quarantined, and no planes could land here or nothing, So, what do you call, a plane came and did an airdrop down on the pond, and I had, look out the window, and here comes the plane, and those guys were waiting over there at the end over by the road, but the wind was blowing from the north. They dropped that parachute and that serum, and everything, and of course they were wrapped pretty good, but the parachute was dragging it on the ice. Those guys were falling down, running after the parachute. That was so funny.
So the row of houses, 1, 2, 4, Ludi, Shane's, they weren't built.
There was nothing in down there. Yeah.
You were the
there
last
was a barn, barn over there, and so
so
it was
you could
all
see it.
flat land there, and and it was so funny if you watch those guys running after falling on the ice, After that, that plane made a second run, another bag with parachute, but they stayed on this end and let the parachute come to them. That was so funny.
How long was that time frame of quarantine?
That is 1954.
Yeah, was it like for months, or how long did everybody have to quarantine and not be?
Oh, we were quarantined for, let me see, what? Must have been about 3 weeks.
Okay.
Because it took time for them to get the serum there and everything else.
Yeah.
And when after they got it, then we used to have a nurse called Ada lot. She came, and giving everybody shots,
In the homes?
Yeah. But we stayed at home, for another week. And then we went back to school again.
Okay. So that's like winter, springtime. When did you know it was April Fool's Day when you were a kid?
No.
Okay.
No. It wasn't a big day, probably when I got older,
Yeah.
I don't recall when exactly, called me a fool.
So growing up, tell us, just to get an idea of the family life back then as a child. Did you have responsibilities? Did you have to haul coal? Who were your friends? What kind of tricks did you play on people?
It was pretty much trained, to, I had all the siblings, I had me, and of course my older brother Ben, and I, and then Father Peter, and then Eugene, and Catherine. We had one sister, Catherine, and we all had chores to do, That was, but we took turns. Who's the dishwasher? Who's wiping the dishes, and stuff like that. Who's sweeping the floor, Who had to fill the coal bucket, The coal bucket was a really big deal, and everybody was, oh, your turn, no way, it's your turn. And Well, of course, boys are boys, we will kind of get into a ruckus there and everything else, My mom used to get after us with a broom sometimes. I'm going to tell you to your dad when he gets home. Well, I mentioned my dad, and that was it, Dad was a disciplinarian with a belt,
So did you have to haul the coal like from some house somewhere, or did they have a pile outside your house? Or,
I'm sorry?
Like, where did you haul coal from?
What they call it? They deliver a sack of coal, We'd get average a sack of coal every week,
Mm-hmm.
And,
did they pour it down?
No, it just sack of coal.
Delivered?
We used to have coal boxes outside, and then we'd fill the coal bucket and bring it inside. We had only one stove, and in the morning, all our windows were about 1/4-inch frost on the inside. We didn't melt the frost and make eyes so we could look outside. And then, of course, that used to be we'd get in a ruckus about whose eyes those are, and everything. That's my one, what do you call it? Then because Mom was a broom, But, that was something else. We had one coal stove, and we stayed in the bedroom. There's no heat going in the bedroom. There was no fans or anything like that, And then they start running wire for lights. We had one bulb, but then one bulb in the kitchen, and a bulb there. But then they turned it off. They turned it off, hold the power off to the village at midnight. So.
Was that in the house over here?
Yeah,
and
down there.
Oh,
down
okay.
There, yeah. The house 52. When we moved in there, it was all wired for electricity and everything else.
Did you still have to haul coal?
We had coal. Yeah, we had. As a matter of fact, we had a coal furnace. And all in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
that's when it was downstairs. They would,
and you would have to coal. We had a coal chute that go through the window and just dump the coal in the basement.
I remember that in the priest house in the 60s, the coal being poured down in the basements of houses.
Then what they call it, one year we ran out of coal, so the men had to go out and saw wood, driftwood. So they made a truckload of driftwood, drop down, and then we go there with sled and get a chunk of wood, and everything else. But this one time I remember, and man, I got a chunk of wood, and I found this wood, it was, they had that preserved on tar. Tar over it. I thought, oh boy, this is going to be a good one. Hot one, boy. I tell you, that furnace down in the basement, it was rumbling. It was practically dancing,
Oh, no.
Oh, I was so scared. I felt like to take a fire extinguisher and turn the furnace off, But finally it settled down cold, man. I tell you, it was hot. It was hot. You can even smell the dust, from the air ducts,
Wow.
That's how hot it got, Yeah, I mean, geez, I was lucky I didn't burn the house down.
What about was there set times where you have meals and have to be home? So did you have some restrictions with when you could play out or not play out?
Oh, yeah. We definitely had curfew, I mean, we went according to daylight, though, If it got dark at 5, I mean, you're home at 5, You're not out running around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, You were home at 5. And And as daylight starts getting, and then the curfew changes to, and it was pretty good. I think it was good, I mean. Then when we get home at 5 o'clock when it's dark, guess what we had to do? We stayed home, take turns ironing. They put the iron on the coal stove, we had a couple irons, And they were ironing. Oh, I did 2 shirts already. Oh, never mind.
To do chores.
They used to keep us busy, Them days, the school, didn't give us homework or anything, we didn't have no games or anything like that. And then we were, when we moved down to House 54 down there in the bottom, my dad, he was in the army and everything else, so he got this telegraph deal, send messages, and we'd run line up to upstairs, and he'd send a message. Whoever got the message first would run down and tell him that's what that word was, and they'd give us a piece of candy.
So he wired it to go upstairs?
Yeah.
Oh.
And that was pretty good, Then, we used to have short wave radio, and we could hear that on the radio do it, and holler, Dad, there's a boat coming. See, that was really, it came in handy, we knew what those, it was on the radio,
And so this was in the 50s. What was ship traffic like around here? Were there foreign vessels or?
No, that was very, very rare. Yeah, very rare. Until in the 60s, you start seeing all these fishing boats and coming around. But boats were the way to go. But there's one thing about it, in the summertime, if there's a boat on the horizon, man, you go tell the agent right away. And he'd go to invite them in to come play ball. If they accept, it was a holiday. Everybody quit working and they're going to have a ball game,
Yeah.
The agent was a real fanatic on baseball, He even bought uniforms for the guys, and everything, And so that was happy time, when if they get a day off from work, they go play ball. It was always what they call. That remind me sometimes, some people, don't realize why, we enjoy, celebrate the 4th of July or something like that. Even the government treated us unfairly, and, But, I always tell a story that 4th of July was middle of the week, and it's a big sealing time too, the seals are, and they give you a day off, on 4th of July to go play games and everything else. It was a joyful time, so people just continue to celebrate 4th of July, and,
Yeah. Do you remember anything about the term June, July? And
yeah, that's the old timers used to say that, I'm gonna June, July, June, July. They don't know the exact date, but they know they're happy they're going to have a holiday,
Yeah.
And so they refer to 4th of July or June, July,
So what was your first job?
My first job, I was working at busboy in a hotel. Yeah, I worked there for a year.
Was
2
this
years,
was
I
this
think it was,
tourists or was it people working the ceiling?
Ceiling. They had breakfast at the Aleutian bunkhouse, where all the men came from the train, to work on the seal harvest, of the processing of seal pelts.
And the Aleutian bunkhouse was across from the clinic?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Right over here by,
Where the school is?
yeah, where the school pretty much is. School was part of part of the bunkhouse and also part of the barn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's that cement
Yeah.
wall that's still
That was
there.
the barn, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. That barn used to be a no. They said, no, play in the barn. Boy, we go in the barn. They used to have all that hay up there in the second story and the bunk and in the barn. But they had this slide where they slide the bale of hay down there. It used to be smooth. It used to be good sledding. We'd play in their barn all the time, And then we go, the bales of hay that they had, they stack them in there, and then, we'd sneak and crawl in between them and go to, yeah, you kids, we know you're in there. Boy, we wouldn't answer. Or nothing. Everybody got quiet because we don't get caught in the barn,
Was bringing in hay something that caused more mice to happen here in the village?
Yeah, that barn, was well, we had cows, and everything else, and it was good for us, that had chickens. We could get hay, for chickens to lay down and lay eggs in the hay, But it got too expensive, when the supply ship quit coming, and and then they started using fuel oil furnaces.
Oh, okay.
And so they didn't have to bring coal anymore,
So there were less need for shipping.
It was a big, big operation when the supply ship came in and brought in hay, coal, and all kinds of stuff.
Do you know, was there like a greenhouse by there too?
There was a greenhouse. As a matter of fact, they had 3 greenhouses.
Yeah.
They had one down there, right across from the duplexes there. Down there they had one. And then they had one here by
above the church?
By the church, yeah. And then they had another one right down, on the other side of the barn, out of the fence. There was another one close to the pond,
I think I remember Mom talking about sneaking in and taking carrots or stuff from in that greenhouse that was by the barn.
Yeah. That'll be one down there by the pond,
Yeah.
Close to the pond. We just sneak in this one here and just like what they call. They didn't need no rabbits here to steal. We used to get a lot of radishes, man. We used to eat a lot of radish. They used to grow radishes all the time. I remember sneaking in there, don't even stand up, reaching around and grabbing the radish and sit there eating the radish. And it's funny too. We'd go down to the coal chute in the store, and we'd go down in there and we'd sit in there and eat carrots. I thought carrots was candy too.
Oh my.
Down the coals. And then, we had the coal house, so when you go down in the store, they didn't know we were going down the store, the basement through the coal chute. When you get home and then get mad at it, play in that coal house, We used to have play in the coal house or either the barn, or then we go down and sled down the coal chute, into the store to eat carrots.
Is it the store now?
That CC building now.
Okay, yeah. So
that used to be the government store.
Yeah.
Right.
Before it became a community canteen.
Yeah.
Was the store. Okay.
After they built a new store, they turned it over to the community and they made it to a canteen,
Yeah. So what was that with with your maybe teenage days, what kind of activities, hunting or chichki hunting?
Yeah, well,
dances or
you know, they what they call it, you know, they build a new rec hall, you know, and a lot of that labor came after work hours. You know, the guys volunteered and go there and, you know, build it because they wanted to, you know, they wanted this place, you know, so they'd go there and they'd work on it, you know,
what years
pay,
was that?
without pay, yeah.
Yeah, what year?
The rec hall, yeah.
What year was that built?
No, it was back in the 50s.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So after World War II.
Yeah. That remind me of 1950, 56, I think it is, or 55. We built the Coast Guard station, you know. It was, I was working as a mess boy down here, and then and the government had volunteered me to work out there. They wanted some guy for the construction crew, you know. I was working there, you know, and the guy told me, you know, the cook said, "Hey, you're a good worker." He said, "Hey, we could hire you, you know, and you could go with our company." I said, "No," I said, "I'm working for government." He said, "So how much they pay you?" I said, $30 a month, you know. But, you know, you work, you know, when you work mess boy, you work 7 days a week, you know, and 10 hours, sometimes 12 hours, you know, as a mess boy. And he said, "You know what we do? We're paying the government $1 an hour for you to be out here to work," you know. I said, "Let me, you know, after I get through doing what they call cleanup, I'd be laying down out there and say, 'Hey, you can't be laying around. We pay $1 an hour for you.' I don't get paid $1 an hour." I said, "I get paid $1 a day, that's all, you know." He said, "We could pay you $1 an hour, we pay the government $1 an hour for you. I said, quit the government and work for us." I thought, no, I can't quit the government, you know. It would probably jeopardize my dad's job and everything else, you know. So that's how what they called it. You couldn't get in trouble, you know.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you know, the agent, you know, take it out on your parents or something like that, you know.
Were you like 16 at that time?
It was kind of a disciplinary thing, you know. Make your parents more responsible for their children, I guess.
Wow.
You know, because it affects their grade status, you know. They used to have, you know, A, B, and C, something like
classes.
That. Yeah, class.
Yeah.
Employees, you know. Somebody get bad or something like that, they'd knock them down, you know, back down to a C and start all over again, you know. It was kind of a funny thing, you know, and it affected they got their bonus, you know, ceiling bonus. That was funny about that. When you get ceiling bonus in, you know, November, you get that Sears Christmas catalog, and man, that's so funny, you know. They used to Christmas presents would come in on November boat, you know, from Seattle. One funny story, what they call Simeon Switzoff told me about, you know, I used to work with him down a machine shop, and he said, "Yeah, when the boat come, boys, they would be happy and bring all the toys and everything. Let the kids play with it. When they fall asleep, you get up and put them away, hide them away, give it to them on Christmas." He told me that, I just cracked up laughing. Yeah.
So you went to high school, you said 54.
Yeah, I went to high school in
56.
56, my first year down
You went to
there.
Mount Edgecombe?
Yeah, I graduated in 1960. 65 years ago. I just realized that too.
Well, so you would like leave in August or September? or to go to school, and then you're gone all through Christmas until school is over, right?
Right. We stayed there. We didn't have no phones or anything like that. When down in Edgecombe, Capener came here, and he'd be on shortwave radio, talk. So Christmas, it used to be funny. The parents would go down to Capener's and we go to a radio guy with a radio down there in Mount Edgecombe side, and go to his house and we talk. Merry Christmas, over! And crying, Don't forget, say over, It was so funny. It was happy to hear their voices and stuff like that.
How did you find out when they were going to call? Like, did Capener
and he would make arrangements with the other shortwave radio guy down there in Mount Edgecombe, and they got some students there. The parents would like to talk, and they said, "Oh, no problem." I guess so we'd go to his house. They're pretty nice too, people. Yeah.
And then you come back in May?
Come back in May, yeah. Right. We leave in September, come back in May.
And then you work in summertime?
And just go to work all summer and then go back out again. I remember, I saved I saved all 3 of my checks, I took them down there. Student line for the school bank, Her had all my 3 checks, $90. In front of me was Stanley Mack. He deposited, a couple $1,000. I was like, and I was proud of my $90. That was so funny, Boy, fishermen that time, they had a lot of money. I knew who my friends were.
What were the holidays like in Sitka?
It was good. They'd allow us to go to church, We'd go across there and everything else.
But not across a bridge.
No, we had to catch a ferry. That's funny, this one year we decided, let's see, Dixon stepped in and I and some other guy, I forgot who it is. I think his name was Upixon. So we were on and said, "Hey, look at the story, man." "Oh, let's get." And then we looked around, we got some planks, so we hurry up, took the dory, put it in the channel. We're going to go over across, But that channel tide is really, what they call. We put it in the water. Got 3 of us got in there, and we start using the plank, to try to go across. And it looked, holy cow, the dory was just leaking, water was up to, but get back shore, we're going to sink, Oh my gosh. We got back to shore, and by the time we got to shore, and I tell you, it was almost to our, what they call it, almost to her knee. It was halfway up our cab with the water and that. Boy, never again, No wonder that little skiff was laying there. We didn't know any better anyway. We just want to get across the town,
Yeah. So
it was like, it was like, I don't know, I guess it was a little Alcatraz,
Yeah.
Because we couldn't get across unless you get a pass and go on a shore boat. They called it a shore boat.
Well, that was like, when you were there, wasn't there like a Mount Edgecombe hospital?
Yeah,
So
that hospital, that was...
So did it serve people from Sitka
It served all natives. It was actually a TB hospital, I think, yeah. Yeah, but then they had a dental program in there and everything else.
Did they do
my senior year, I almost volunteered to take a dental assistant training, you know. I thought about it, and then, you know, oh, no, I better not.
Oh, I was just going to ask you that. So they did provide training.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
Dental training, okay.
Then, you know, they'd allow so many students to you know, take training like dental assistant or, you know. Yeah.
So for the St. Michael's Cathedral there, it was, who was the priest? The bishop was there.
Bishop was there, Bishop Gregory. Yeah. Bishop Gregory was there. He used to know us from, what's it called, Primalo. You know, we go to church every holiday and everything. And, you know, we'd have, on Tuesday, we'd have a church school on Mount Edgecombe side. And he'd have, you know, the students that are, you know, going to be priests, you know. And Father, what's his name, was a student priest, and he used to go get a church school all the time. Then he tried to volunteer to what they call, send me to seminary. I said, no, I don't.
Who was that?
Oskolkov.
Oh, okay.
Oskolkov, yeah. He was down there. He was a student priest, and, you know, and he tried to, get me to go to a seminary. I don't know. Yeah.
So, do you recall people from the Pribilofs that were living in Sitka, maybe married to Tlingit people there?
Yeah.
Any families? I'm trying to think of, like, I think Michael Kanoff, did he live there from St. George? Did he live in Sitka at that
what's
time?
His name? I know there was a Tony Cushing, and there was a Kachutin, Ludmilla, I believe. He's married to somebody down there.
What about Galanin?
And Galanin, I don't know what Galanin. There was Tony Cushing, yeah. And there was Ludmilla Kachutin down there. Oh, what's his name lived down there too, and I went down there, Kusta Gromov.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he graduated from Edgecombe, and then he got to stay there in Sitka and had a job and everything else. He was down there, yeah.
So after you graduated, what did you do from high school?
From Mount Edgecombe, I went to Haskell. Yeah, I went to Haskell, stayed down there 3 years, yeah. I liked it down there in Kansas. It was beautiful. One time when they have the thunder and lightning, man, standing there watching it, just and the rumble, holy cow! It was so, you know, like the roof was going to cave in, you know, and everything else. It was, and then they hollered at it, "Hey, you dumbass! Eskimo, get away from the window! The lightning's gonna hit you, you know." You know. Lower 48 guys, you know, they call it Eskimo all the time. Just because from Alaska, you know. Everybody from Alaska was Eskimo.
Did you, for your 3 years there, did you stay there year round, or did you come back?
I stayed there for 2 years. I came back the first year because they were going to the Seattle World's Fair. Yeah. 1960, yeah.
1960 or 62?
62, I think,
Yeah.
I went to Seattle World's Fair because everybody was going there. That's funny, you know. Going down, the first year going down to Haskell, we went down on a bus. There was a whole bunch of us natives from Alaska. We had a bus load, you know, and it was a lot of fun. We had fun going down on the bus, you know.
Did you stop and stay at hotels?
We didn't.
just
We
walk?
stayed on a bus, but
Uh-huh.
we stop in these bus stops, and it's funny, when you go in we go in there and I go in there and what they call? Oh, they got a restaurant, and then I go in there a restaurant, and everybody look at each other, look at the menu, and wonder what they don't know what to order. I'll have the same. I'll have the same. It was so funny, everybody would have to say, "Oh, this is an easy group to serve." It was so funny, I mean, of course, we don't used to looking at a menu and don't know,
Where did you get on the bus?
We get on a bus in Seattle.
Oh, okay. So you would fly from Alaska to
From Alaska to
Seattle.
Yeah,
Oh,
Seattle.
okay.
Yeah.
I think my parents were there for the World's Fair.
Huh?
My parents went there
Yeah.
for that World's Fair.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went there. That was funny, The government actually gave us $20, knowing that we were going to go to the World's Fair, So,
Do you remember who all was with you?
huh?
Who all was with you from Pribilof's
There was,
on that bus?
There was Dixon and I. That's the only one from Pribilos, yeah.
Okay.
And then we had a lot of fun down there. It was, we never, seen these cockroaches, I mean big cockroaches, And this one night, we had window open in our dorm, we had a window open, and what there was cricket got in there, and pretty soon we were going to go to sleep, and what's that? We used a lighter looking for what's that? I don't know what's that. When they want to step on the floor, we don't know what we don't know what it was. That was so funny. Oh.
Is that where Dixon met Marge? At Haskell?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
What about you and Chancina?
Huh?
Did you meet Chancina at Haskell?
No.
Oh, okay.
After I got through with Haskell, I caught a train to California when I graduated in December. So I went there. I went to Oakland, California. And I got a job there in Oakland with an automotive engineering company. It was a pretty good job. I liked it, I worked Monday through Friday, take my paycheck and go to San Francisco and get broke. I get broke the whole weekend. San Francisco get broke,
Was that arranged through Haskell? How did you end up deciding to go to California?
Yeah, I went through what they call placement.
Oh,
centers,
okay.
Because they were, they had what do you call relocation people that So I went to California. And, they set you on a bus, on a train, and gave you a bag, When they took you, for a sack lunch, all the way to California. I got to California, I was hungry.
Wow.
But it was a fun trip, first time on a train and everything else, Yeah.
So staying there in Oakland, was there like a dorm, or you had to get your own place?
No, I stayed in what they call. They got me an apartment and everything else. There was a BIA placement in there, so I used to go to that placement office, and they're the one that set me up with a job with automotive engineering. So that worked pretty good. Yeah. I was down there till, let's see, in 1963. and I got a notice from the local board. I know what it was, it was a draft notice. They draft you, So I looked at it and I scratched my address, my Oakland address off there, and I put St. Paul Island, Alaska. I drop it back in the mailbox. I didn't even open it, And then I checked out of my apartment and everything else. I went to Seattle. I was in Seattle for about 6 months. And then I caught a boat, the government's boat. That was the first time it was coming up there. It was a SFR 72. It didn't have Pribilof on it at that time. It was a surplus boat. And man, that thing was rolling. It didn't have no stabilizers, And then, when it came here, man, everything in the hatch was all wet and everything else, So, yeah. So that was it was a good trip, though. I liked that boat trip,
Did you stop? You stopped in places?
Yeah,
on
we
your way up?
stopped in Alaska. We stopped there. They didn't have no fishing there, big canneries or nothing then, We stopped in Alaska, or in Captain's Bay. I think there was a dock there. We stopped there, and then we'd have to walk along to get to town, about 3 miles to town from there. And man, we was walking, and holy cow, then something was rubbing against the leg when I was walking. It was dark, the darn dogs, What's that? Oh, it's a dog. I just keep walking. Pretend you don't know you're there. We were scared of the dog. We just finally we walked into town, And then I visit, some of those people that, in town, the old timers that come here and work. They work in a crew, we knew who they were. And then I had my uncle down there too, Buriskin. Yeah, so visit him and everything else. And but it was funny, I mean, they didn't have no street lights either, or anything like that. And it was dark there, but you could see the houses. A light is on, and some kids are playing out there. Where Buriskin lives? Yeah, over there. I'll show you. Taking them over there. Of course, how kids are. They'll find somebody new. They talk to them, ask a question, and all that. So they take us over there too. That was pretty neat.
So you stayed in Alaska more than
when you stayed there, just stopped there. I don't know whether they got water or something.
Okay.
But we decided, we'll go there. We'll check my uncle out. Yeah.
Then you came up here.
Yeah.
Not the Pribilof yet, though.
Yeah. It did. When I was down in San Francisco, they had an Indian center down there, and they'd have dances, Friday night and Saturday night, they had dances down there. And I'd go there, that's where I met my wife, Chelsea. Yeah.
Was she living there then in San Francisco?
Yeah, she just relocated there too, And she went to the BIA dance hall, and that's where all the Indians, lower 48, they will hang out there and everything else. All right, and that was pretty neat, They even had one. They had one in L.A. too, and there were all these big towns. They had a center, BIA center. Yeah. That was
so
neat,
she didn't go with you on the boat, though.
Huh?
She didn't come with you on the boat.
No.
Okay.
No. We never got together again after, then I did a stint in the Army, from 64 to 66. And then,
So they found you.
Well, they did. And what they call letter came in again. My dad said, "That's the second time that thing come here." He said, "You better answer that. You better." And then what they call it, told me to report to Anchorage. I said, "Well, we wanted to go to Anchorage and get a physical and everything." I got to Anchorage and I didn't go report right away. I was there for about 2 weeks, in Anchorage, and every time that what they call a recruiter, would find out what hotel I am and then call, so I'd change hotels. So I ended up 2 weeks, and then finally I ran out of money, and I said, "Well, I guess I got to go to Fort Rich now." Yeah, that was something else. I was going to get in the Army, and then National Guards, came from here. They went to Camp Denali. And the National Guards, they used to have National Guards here, and they were in Camp Denali. I was still in the recruiting station there, and then I tell him, hey, there's a sergeant here want to talk to you. I said, "Oh, yeah?" So I got up off my bunk and went on, and here it was Johnny Miller. He said, "Hey, come on, I want you at the PX. The guys are there having a beer." I said, "Okay, I'm coming." So I went down to the PX, or those guys were all having a beer down there, Camp Denali. That was something. And then, a couple of days later, I went to California. Went to California, and then I seen John Cena a couple of times when I was in California. Then I got shipped out to Texas. I went to Texas and got into medical training down in San Antonio, Texas. This was Fort Sam Houston, where I had medical training. And then from there I went to Vietnam. Yeah. That was not fun.
How long were you there, Vietnam?
I was there for a year. Yeah.
Then after that, you came back here?
After, I got out. Yeah, I got out in Oakland. Oakland, California. It took me what they call from Oakland to Vietnam. It took about 28 days on a troop carrier. Wow. See, I was a medical corpsman, and we stayed in a hospital on the ship, so we had air conditioning, music, and everything else, It was pretty neat. And we all white, and then a stethoscope, clipboard in the hand, and go and inspect the troop quarters. That was pretty funny, Here's a private, and "Sergeant, get that cleaned up." "Yes, sir." He didn't wear no rank, Well, I enjoyed that. "Sergeant, get that cleaned up." "Yes, sir." Then I write it down, what they go.
Paying back the government.
Yeah, it was boy, is that my glory then, man. I was knocking them sergeants down left and right. What's your name, Sergeant? Give me his name, rank. Name, rank, and show you the number. Okay, I'll be back and check this out. I want to clean, because a lot of those troops, they weren't seamen, they're puking all over the place,
Yeah.
And they were in there like sardines, I tell you. Yeah. But anyway, it was nice. It was really a sea cruise for me, Just we'd play penny ante poker, all night, get orange juice from, what do they call it, get orange juice from a mess hall. Where's the orange juice? You guys use a lot of orange juice. Hey, that's for our patients, Yeah. It was really a nice sea cruise.
After that, did you, because I know you, I don't know when you came back and lived here, and then you lived in Anchorage for a while, and then came back, or after you and Chansina
Yeah, we got married in 1967.
Here on island.
Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, we got married in February 26th.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
It was a blizzard and cold day. Yeah. Yeah, we were married for 48 years? 49, almost 49. Yeah.
And then you lived here for
I'm sorry?
You lived here for a while after you got married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did, 67. Then I moved to Anchorage. 83, what they call it, when the government pulled out. Because I had so much government time already, and I had 5 more years and I'd have 20 years in, so I thought, well, I'll go for 5 years there, And I got a job at Fort Ridge. It worked out pretty good. Yeah. And I was there, let's see, in 78, I was what they call 78, they brought me back here. Government, I had that job in Fort Ridge, and then the government needed a shop foreman, so they made a deal with me, so they paid all my way, and then all my moving expense and brought me back here. So I was a shop foreman down there in the machine shop for a while, till 83. Yeah.
And then you moved out again?
Yeah,
Back to Anchorage?
yeah. I moved out again, when the government pulled out. Like I said, I already had 15 years in government service. So, there was no government jobs here anyway. So, and I was already career status with government, so, they would give me a priority higher position, so it was easy to get a job at Fort Ridge again. Being a war veteran and, and my classification here. So.
So then, when you came back, was it like 1990 or before that? When you stayed in that house that the
house 14.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that was old, and they made 2-story. And, and the floor plan, the kitchen plan, and everything else. Chansina did that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he wanted, just want a house with a lot of cupboards, and a kitchen, and so what they call it. I want the sink right here, he said. Oh, but the plan says, I want the sink right there.
Smart.
They say, what they call it. They say, no, the floor plan says this. I don't care what it says. I want that sink right there. She wanted the sink by the window,
So when did she become? She was city manager.
She worked for the store for a while, She was doing all the bookkeeping for the store. And then after that, she moved to the city, 1970. And I was president of the LA community back in the 70s. So, and that's when they created the city with the help of Patrick Plutnikov. Him, he was my contact person in Anchorage, and he was working for BIA at the time, and so he get all the funding and everything else, and he tell me, well, we'll get you a ticket here, you come in, we're going to DDC. I said, all right, DC it is. Yeah, it worked pretty good. He would, we got all the expertise, like from University of Alaska, come and talk to the tribal council about, our economic potentials and stuff like that, how the city would survive, and, the economist from University of Alaska Fairbanks came in, and of course Pat made all those arrangements, it was very good.
So that was a way of accessing monies to go to municipalities.
I'm sorry?
So by having a city here that helped to access monies that go to municipal governments, like with public services, public works services, is it?
When we first created, the city, it was small. It was a fourth-class city, and the state would only allocate X amount of dollars, that's all, Because, then, we had, government was still buying fuel and everything for the rec hall and turning on the lights and stuff like that, so. And it was all right, I guess, There's one thing about it, though, it was kind of a funny deal, that just so the land claims got settled too. The same year we created the city, in '71, and I said, if I know the land claims was going to go through, we never would have created a city, we would have been all right. We would be a tribe, but we didn't have communications. It was, it took a couple of years to create the city, actually, because we had to go to the office and come in and get messages, for communication outside.
That was telegraph.
We didn't have we didn't have no telephones or nothing, so it actually took a couple of years to actually create the city,
Was that the telegrams were like, be advised to meet, stop? Yellow paper.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it was a long process, but it happened, and eventually, finally got a telephone up there. I remember, when the first people were standing in line, they hear what everybody's saying.
Right.
Phone. One phone, for their village,
And then I think they put it in a little office, then you could close the door.
Yeah, everybody, they were talking to that. It was so funny,
Were you involved in the formation of Pribilof School District? Or not?
Yeah,
or later?
Yeah, I was. I actually was. We were in this old school, and I actually went to the meetings when they were planning the school, and they didn't, it was a government thing, and they didn't want. They didn't want to have a gym because they just wanted classrooms, just like they had the old school was, yeah. They said, well, you got a gym up there, I said, hey, and I really had to argue with them, I said, hey, the students, come from class and go take a gym, go to the gym. They don't have to leave the building and go up to the Rick Hole, you know what I mean? It was really kind of hectic, you know, because the government didn't want to spend money for a gym, you know. So we got that gym that size, you know. But I was really disappointed that when I went to St. George, they got a bigger gym, you know. Really, you know, they had a beautiful gym there, yeah.
So the school was built with government monies?
Yeah.
Federal funds?
Yeah. They did, you know. As a matter of fact, it was still a government school. I don't know what year it wasn't too long ago, you know. We tried to get funding from the government, you know, to do some repairs and stuff like that. And no, we turned that school over to the state. You got to go deal with the state, you know. But there they were still doing St. George's maintenance school and everything else, you know. And,
Yeah.
right.
So with I wanted to hear you share about how you got into being the MC at 4th of July.
Oh, that's a funny story, all right. How I did, what they call it. It was July 4, you know, and Larry McCooley, you know, what they call. They used to bring Larry up, you know, every year for 4th of July, and the plane didn't make it, you know. And out of desperation, Phyllis called my house. My brother, Father Peter, answered the phone. He said, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah, he'll be down there." My brother, Father Peter, you know, he told Phyllis, "Yeah, okay, he'll be down there." And then, "Who are you talking to?" I said, "Well, that was Phyllis. They want you to be one to take care of the games on 4th of July." I don't. Okay, I'm not going down there. "Hey, I told him you're going down there." He said, "I'll help you." He said he'll help me. Yeah, I got down there and the Phyllis gave me the what they call, you know, bell, yeah. And that, and my helper was nowhere in sight. He said he'll help me. He was nowhere in sight. He's walking around talking with people.
Do you remember what year that was?
No, I don't remember. That was so funny, you know. So much for a helper, I said.
So that's pretty much when you started to do that.
Right. Yeah. He said, "Yeah, he'll be down there." "Who are you talking to?" "Well, that was Phyllis." "Well, what she want?" He said, "Well, they want you to be what they call for kids' games." "Oh, I'm not going to do that." He said, "Why? I'll help you." I said, "Okay." But then I kind of enjoyed it, you know. I did, you know. I had fun to watch those kids. I enjoy it every year. I look forward to it. Matter of fact, last time I was in a hospital, you know, it was in June, and doctor said, "Well, we're doing very well. You're healing very well." I said, "Yeah, I gotta get out of here. I gotta go home before 4th of July." He said, "Oh no, you're going to be here longer than that." I said, "No, I'm not."
And
I made it back. You know. Of course, that's kind of hard on me though. But then I got over it. You know, had to sit down a few times. You know.
That's good. You mentioned working with Simeon Swetzoff Sr. Was that machine shop, or where was it that you worked with him?
When he came over, he moved over. Yeah. I was working down machine shop when they moved over here. Simeon, his wife, Alec Galanin, and his wife, they all moved. You know, they all relocated, you know, from St. George here. And he was what they call in the machine shop. He used to I used to work with him all the time. He was a lot of fun. He was funny, you know.
Yeah.
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 He was.
So I remember that machine shop there. I remember going with his daughters. Like his wife would make him breakfast sandwich,
Yeah.
and almost every day, and somebody had to take it down there and deliver it to him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you worked
He
in that
was.
machine
Yeah.
shop.
He was fun. He was fun to work with. That's what you call it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So, I guess maybe, we've been visiting for hour and a half, I think, already. Sometimes people come here and they're like, I don't know if I have anything to talk about, and they're surprised they got lots to talk about. Is there, if you're nowadays, what are the good things you see about living here, or do you have any concerns about our community and its continuity? Or
Well, I see. You know, there's been a big change. You know, as a matter of fact, the change is pretty much positive. Everybody seem like are getting together and, you know, trying to, you know, resolve our problems and what to go. Before it was, this is mine. When the government pulled away in '83, you know, everybody, you know, spray paint, TDX, spray paint city, you know. Then it kind of drew lines, you know, where every entity was, you know, this is mine. No, that's mine, you know. So it was kind of hectic, you know. But now, you know, I see it, you know, there's a change in time and everything else, and people are trying to realize it, you know, and they're trying to work with each other, and kind of an open door policy, what used to be, you know. I mean, what a time, you know, when I was growing up, you know, we never had no padlocks or no locks or anything like that, you know. Somebody just come in, oh, I don't want to know that. He asked it out if anybody, you know, they just walk in, you know. I mean, nowadays it's all right. That's funny, you know. I tried to mention when I was growing up, you know, we had limited food, you know, and everything else. We got to play out, kids, and then you could smell bread, whole fresh bread. Hey, go over there and knock on that door. Tell me your mama want to borrow bread. Hey, it's your turn. Well, I go there, knock on the door. My mama want to borrow bread. Well, your mama never returned the bread. My mom never knew, you know, she borrowed bread. I never forget that. Well, I go to oh, your mom never returned the bread, he said, and then you give it to you anyway. Yeah. And it's funny too, we used to, when we were a kid, you know, we'd go, you know, we'd eat sea urchins all the time in the summer. During the summertime, we don't want to go home, you know, because they'll put us to work. So we eat, you know, sea urchins, and we experiment with eating seaweed. You know, we don't know if it's the right one or not. Anyway.
Looking back over your life and times, what would you say now if you had to give advice to folks about success or living a happy life? What
one thing I'm very disappointed in is the fact that, you know, parents are not getting involved with the school. I'm very disappointed, you know what I mean? You know, it would be nice, you know. The only time they seem like they're involved is when they're doing fundraiser for the kid, you know what I mean? Every day should be a fundraiser, you know, for your kids, you know, regardless of you trying to raise funds or just go and, you know, show up at the schools and could I help? Could I help teach? Could I help me? You know what I mean? It would make it better, you know. It'd be better for the kids too. They'll be so proud, you know. Like, you know, I walk in school and my grandkids see me, you know, I mean, they go right to me. This is my papa, you know what? You know what I mean? They're happy. They're glad they see your papa in school, you know. I mean, parents, those kids would treat their parents that way too, and make them happy and proud because their papa or their grandma or their mom or dad shows up in school just to observe them, you know, or something like that, you know. It's an open school, you know, and we'll have to do check-in, you know, at the gate, you know, I mean, at the door, you know, when you get in there, check in, you know, I'd like to observe my child's class, you know, or something like that, you know. They're most welcome to do that, you know, and you know, that's one thing I'm so concerned about is the education system. I've been involved in it for quite some time, you know, and because I'm interested in trying to get the, you know, motivating and everything else, you know, for the kids are concerned, you know. I really like the idea, you know, that the kids are learning Elliot, you know, and they're trying to, you know, and it's really something, you know, they learn fast when they do a hands-on thing, you know. And especially, you know, like Bering Sea days, they go learn about crab or what they call it. And I remember Chauncey used to go to, Papa, you know what they call a crab? It's lava and what? No. Oh yeah, they do. You know, and make them sound like an expert. Boy, he really feels good. Oh, Papa didn't know that.
Yeah. He sure spent a lot of time at the shore, Chauncey. He was always playing by checking things out in the rocks. And,
yeah. He's pretty good. You know, I mean, when he go hunting with me or what was going. I'd go down there and get sea urchins. Then they went on a field trip, and he'd come home. Papa, I bought you some sea urchins. Oh, good, thank you. And, you know,
yeah.
That's funny when you have the, you know, CBS have a meeting, you know, he don't stand in line, you just go right over to the crab and take a crab and eat crab, oh, you know. It's funny, you know, and he learned so much about crab, you know. Then you got the crab pot and throw it off the dock and put bait in there, and they got about 6 hair crab one day, you know. He brought it home, he boiled it up, and I said, Papa, you want to eat some crab? I said, no, that's all right, you eat it, that's all. He ate it all up, you know, that crab. That's pretty good, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I like, you know, and, you know, that's what one of my main concerns is. I'm glad, you know, they have these games, you know, basketball games and stuff like that. They should have more volleyball too, you know, so people get involved in it, you know, different ages. That's what I liked about the last time they had tournament, you know. They had adults, plus they had kids playing with them, you know. That was really a good deal there, you know. Make those kids really proud of themselves that playing volleyball against my mom or, you know. It's really, it's a big motivating factor, I think, for the kids.
Like mixing ages.
Yeah. You don't separate them out there. Oh, no, that's what they call. This is adult night, you know. They don't do that and just get them involved in it. It's really, that's a beautiful sight to see.
Yeah. I like that too. What about, we haven't had anybody say anything, but other people we visited, we've asked if they had any regrets, anything you wished happened in the history of St. Paul or the Pribilofs.
One thing I regret is, that it seems like we're not doing nothing, enough for the teenagers, We don't have a hangout place for them, to make sure we had a jukebox room and a hangout for teenagers. They hang out and made rules to them. You guys spit on the floor, no tobacco in here. If it is, it's going to close it up. And they didn't spit on the walls. They didn't They didn't want it closed, and they took care of it, and they police each other, to make sure that, that they don't, chew tobacco in there. They might chew tobacco in there, but they don't spit on the wall or anything else, Because in the past, they play up in the gym, everything else, and most of it is adults, so they, and point the finger at the kids.
Right. Yeah, they used to have those heaters on the wall.
Yeah.
And people would spit in those too. I remember that.
Yeah. That's one thing I think it's really lacking for a hangout spot for them, say, they open this place, the jukebox. I don't know what they do nowadays. When they use bring your own CDs and dance or whatever,
Yeah. I know that they have that e-shop, but I don't think the teenagers really go there to them.
Yeah. Like I say, a teenage hangout, where they. I wonder what happened to the jukebox they had in school, I remember when the school was, Bippus was a superintendent. Man, I went down there one day with the school board. I went down there and, geez, jukebox going right there in the hallway. And
Oh, yeah.
Elvira was really playing loud. I said, what the heck? Geez, sound like a Bippus came in. Oh, hey, Jay, what's happening? I said, geez, what does this sound like an all-night dance hall? I
remember that.
Yeah, when they had recess or something, they turned the jukebox on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That little lobby area was different in the school. Is there anything you want to share? Anything you feel like we missed?
I'm getting concerned about, people not applying for jobs. There's so much opening around here, and it's kind of hard, that people are having a hard time trying to do business, and, they don't have manpower to do it with, and I think they need to stress to students and stuff that, they have to learn to be dependent, be more dedicated to the cause, and like I used to have youth hire, and I said, if you don't learn anything, one thing you're going to learn is be prompt. You'll be here at this time, and then we'll take a break this time, and judge it by that, and now, geez, seems like nobody wants to work. Maybe they're too much. A lot of them say, "Oh, I make more money on unemployment,"
Mm.
Well, that might be true. I don't know, but it's people are becoming dependent on free money.
Yeah.
They want to earn a living, that's. Hey, why don't you go to work? Oh, no, I'm a fisherman. Well, okay, you're a fisherman. How come you didn't fish this summer,
Mm-hmm.
Hello? It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, that's true.
I feel bad about that, Yeah.
Sharing.
I enjoy it. I could talk for hours,
Yeah.
hours,
Yeah, we feel like that's important right now, and it's interesting because people are not just here and other places are saying you got to tell your stories. You should tell the young folks what life was like.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing that here where we could talk about different locations, but the younger kids don't know where those places were.
Yeah. I think a lot of it also falls on the parent, not giving their kids responsibility, like, hey, today you're going to do this, or stuff like that, chores,
Mm-hmm.
Instead the parents go around cleaning up after them, it's, like I said, when I was growing up, my mom or dad didn't have to clean up after me,
Right.
Really. Yeah.
Yep. Important stuff, those chores. I was sharing that about my dad and having the priest salary. So he would do other businesses, but we pretty much learned we had to work if we wanted to have money.
Yeah.
So we couldn't ask it from our parents. We had to get babysitting jobs, working in the coffee shops, or in order to get our own spending money.
You mentioned coffee shop. I used to run what they call Grace Ann Cafe down there. They came out with these sandwiches. You heat in the plastic bag, put it in this machine. Hit 3 and order them up. People would buy that stuff. And
Yeah.
coffee and sandwiches. And then, that sometimes they'd have
Poor
fish.
boys.
Yeah.
Poor boy
Yeah.
sandwiches.
Yeah, it was easy, I what they call do that, when I was going to school. But then after I worked, I worked out there at that Coast Guard station. That was funny. We used to get picked up at 5 in the morning. They used to have a bus, down there by the hotel. Get there by 5, the bus would leave there at 5:10 or something like that. And if I missed the bus, man, here you go. Running out there to work, Maybe that's why I was to run that marathon. Yeah, I run that marathon all the time.
So when you do that, you remember how you used to.
And it's funny, too, when I get done out there, it's 8 o'clock and the bus is not ready to come back, And they, I'm going home, it's 8 o'clock. I said, geez, I put out 12 hours out here already, And the cook said, oh, I wait for the bus. I wait for the damn bus. And I got, here you go, running back. I got to get back for that 9 o'clock movie, That movie, that's one thing about it, people need a restaurant here, or, it was a good thing, They had several like Grace Ann, what do you call it? Down here.
Vic's.
Vic Coffee Shop, then the Star Coffee Shop,
Cafe,
Gabe stepped in, People
Ice cream
they
shop.
would go one shop to another one and go and see who's there and talk, drink coffee or tea, and then, yeah.
Yeah. More visiting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was so nice,
Well, thank you, Jason. Yeah, thank you for coming and visiting with us.